Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today, me and Jess are going over our best tips on how to get hired both in the corporate and freelance world. We have some fun stories and some tips and tricks on how to land that new job. So without further ado, let's dive straight into the episode. Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm getting a phone call from unknown.
Nice. You gonna answer
it? No. I'm actually so Google has this new function called screen call. So it'll use Google Assistant to screen the call. So it will actually this is Google Assistant talking to the person right now. And so it'll say hello, the person you reached is now using a screening service. Yeah. And so, now they just ended the call because they found that it's a robot talking to another robot.
Damn, I need one of those.
It's only on Google. It's only
on
Google. Yeah. Unfortunately. It's so cool, the technology. They can actually hold the phone for you and know when the other person's back on the line, and then they'll reconnect you. So you can hold the phone so you don't have to listen to any elevated music or anything like that. You can do your own thing. You don't have to keep constantly paying attention to the phone. So you can do it. Yeah. And then when they come back, they'll be like, hey, you can now talk to the other person. The line's reconnected now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's so sick. Yeah, it's so cool. But anyways, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about how to get hired, either in corporate or in freelance. Because Jess, you've been doing some hiring, recently for your team, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, interviewing. I'm not doing the hiring.
Okay, got it.
But I have a say.
Yeah. So you have experience in corporate, and your job, your title again is
software engineer.
Software engineer, exactly. and I'm a wedding filmmaker, so I'm freelance. So we hire other freelancers and stuff like that regularly for our company and stuff. And for you, what is your interview process or hiring process like for people joining your team?
Yeah, so I guess I could talk about it both in the perspective of the interviewer and interviewee, because I've been on both sides.
Right.
For being the interviewer, the process for us is we will screen people. So we'll take a look at their resumes and, kind of see what kind of person they are, I guess, and what kind of experience they have. And then from there, we will invite them into an interview. Typically, depending on what position we're hiring for, we will do both a behavioral and a technical interview, either if it's together or separate, it doesn't really matter. We'll screen them for just kind of seeing what kind of person they are, how they will work with the team, if they will work well with the team. Because you kind of get a feel of people, I know there's a lot of nerves and stuff, but you can kind of see with the way they answer things, how they would be in a corporate setting or in a team setting. So I think the behavioral questions are definitely important because you want to know what kind of person they are. Yes, they can be a good engineer, but at the same time, can you work well with people? Can you communicate well? Yeah. Those are all things that are important to us. And being a good engineer, you need to be able to communicate. You don't just code by yourself and that's it, right? So I think that's pretty much the process of how we hire people. And if we like you, then we will hire you. And then for the opposite, it's kind of the same thing. That's kind of the interview process that I've gone through.
So how do you guys determine by looking through the resume who to call back in a sense? What on the resume stands out the most for you guys?
So for us, because we know for the project what kind of skill sets we need, we look for those depending on if they have that experience or not, and seeing what technologies they work with, how long they work with them, all of that kind of thing. So I like to keep an eye out for there's kind of 4 technologies or 5 technologies. I'm okay, these need to be in their resume in order for us to even consider them, because that's what they're going to be working on every day. So if they're kind of lacking some of the other things that are very specific to the project, we kind of we don't glance over it, but we're okay, have they worked with anything else that's similar to these things? Or do they understand the methodology behind those things so that they can apply and learn very quickly to the things that they don't know?
Right.
Other than that, for interns, for example, I kind of look at school projects. I will see what do they do outside of school, because are you actually interested in doing this, or are you just going through the motions of I need to get an internship type of thing?
Yeah.
So that's important. I think it really stands out to me when they have experience outside of school, depending on what it is. I think anything really, it's like, wow, that's really cool that you did XYZ, for example, whether that's computer science related or not. I think it really shows, like leadership, for example, that's not technically computer science related, but that's really cool that they did that, as an intern coming in. That's kind of some of the things that I look for.
So it's not how well you designed the resume, or like whether your resume sticks out like a quarter inch more. Have you heard about Trick?
No.
I don't know, someone who's trying to get hired into like corporate America, they purposely printed out the resume on paper that was half an inch bigger than the standard A4, 8.5 by 11. So every time you stack the papers, his resume would stick out just a little bit.
Interesting.
And you would either find it super annoying, or you'd be like, what is that? And you'll pull it out and you'll always look at it, at that resume.
Interesting. No, I've never heard of that.
It's such a weird thing. But it's so smart. I've never heard of that before, but
I've never seen that before.
Yeah. So it's definitely not about the design or how well did you design the resume and stuff like that, right?
I mean, to a certain degree, yes. If it's like super, super lengthy, I won't read all of it. I mean, if it's like 10 pages, I've seen a resume where it was like 3 pages front and back. And I'm like, I'm not reading all of this. I'm reading the first page and that's probably it, oof. But some people like to include it and I'm like, okay, sure. But obviously a well-designed resume that's readable, that's easily readable is important because it's like, I'm glancing, right? Like all of these things are high level. I'm not going to spend more than a minute maybe looking at your resume unless there's something that intrigues me. But other than that, it's like I do not have the time, nor does any other hiring manager have the time to really read through every single bullet. So I guess that's a tip. It's like if you're trying to apply for a job, make sure that your bullets are concise and that they are detailed enough that if I'm reading just one line, I'm like, oh, okay. And then I want to continue reading all the others. But if it's like super long and lengthy, I will glance over it,
Yeah. How far in the corporate world, how far can fake it till you make it work? Or how far can that get you? And have you ever encountered someone who is like that? Who has faked it on the resume?
Yeah. Yes. Yep. I don't know how much I can say about it.
Okay.
Because
NDAs and stuff, that's fine.
Yeah, I would rather not say it. But yes, I have. Let's just say that you can only go so far before you're fired. Because you can't. Honestly, it's ridiculous that things that I've seen. Honestly, I'm just like, really? I cannot believe. Yeah. I'll tell you offline, but yeah.
I'll tell you one right now, and it's me personally faking it.
Okay.
Yeah. When I was still applying, doing like gig work and stuff like that, before wedding business, there's a full year after I graduated college. So 2017, after I graduated college, that full year, I was still trying to apply for like gigs on like Craigslist and just apply to like different companies and stuff, right? So there's this one gig I looked on like Glassdoor or something like that, or like Monster, and like they were looking for an editor who can only edit on. They only wanted someone who edited on Final Cut Pro, which is an editing software for the Mac system, and you can't use it. You can't download it on Windows PC, right?
Right.
And so I've been only using Adobe Premiere, which is a different, very popular editing software. And I had no idea really how to use Final Cut Pro. And they only wanted a Final Cut Pro editor. And so I put on my resume, I know I'm super experienced in Final Cut Pro, because like every editing software is to me is very similar. So like once you learn one, you know all of them. And so like it's just a matter of like learning the shortcuts and stuff like that, and the keyboard shortcuts and all these little quirks within each software. I was like, yeah, I can do it. So I put on my resume that I've worked on. I know Final Cut Pro for like years. I'm super experienced. I'm a pro at it. And so I got an interview, a phone call interview, and the first thing that the guy asked me is, what are the 3 most used keyboard shortcuts that you use? I'm like, oh no, and I drew a blank at the whole thing, and I just made some things up. I just press I or like O or something like that, and like to do this selection and stuff. And he was like, he paused. After I said it, he paused. He's like, wait, so you press this key to get something when you could do this? I'm like, yes. Because there's like another method to do it.
Oh, no.
And I was like, yes. Because I was like, oh yeah, because I remapped the whole keyboard to a different thing, whatever. I just made some BS up. And I was like, oh no. Oh no, I messed it up. And of course I didn't get a phone call back. Yeah, of course I didn't get it. And so, yeah. So fake it till you make it. It can only get you so far, because there's certain things that you have to know about either the program or the whatever the language that you're using or whatever technology that you're mentioning.
And honestly, that I feel like sets expectations. So let's say, for example, you know, you get hired, but you lied on your resume about certain things, right? As the person who's going to work with you and hired you, we're going to expect that you know the things you said, right? And so if you're starting to not know any of the basics, it really, really shows. And I feel like I, for example, get frustrated if people are like, I have 5 years of experience in this. And it's like, you don't know how to do this, but you have 5 years on your resume. Like, it just is very bizarre to me that... I don't know, but
yeah, it's like the most basic thing too. Like they won't know like the most basic thing to do something. Yeah, and it's like, 5 years in, you should know much more than this. You should be way past this point. Yeah,
yeah. It's definitely frustrating, and it really shows, because then it's like, okay, someone who's entry level should be able to do this, and you don't know how.
Yeah,
because why?
Yes.
Like what? So yeah, just be truthful on your resume. Like, I know people are trying to get jobs, and I think people get, you know, a little bit intimidated because there's a lot of candidates, and so maybe they'll stretch the truth a little bit just so that they can get a phone call or get their shoe in the foot, get their foot in the door.
That was great. That's a great one right there. We're going to clip this one and put it on TikTok, guys.
Oh, no.
Overnight meme.
Oh my god.
They'll lie on the resume just to get their shoe in the foot, or their foot in the door, or their shoe in the door, through the door.
Yeah, just get your freaking foot in the door. It doesn't matter.
Even if it's a pinky toe. It don't matter. Just get it in there.
Yes, exactly. Oh
Break
my goodness.
Down the door. I really do like what you said about the team that you're working with is also going to be working with you. And if you lied on the resume, then it just drags the whole team down.
Yes.
It slows everything down. Because again, speaking from experience, I was on this one music video shoot, and I put on my resume that I had, you know, more years of experience than I actually do. So like, you know, 7 years or 5 years or whatever, when I only had like 2 years of experience, 2 or 3 years of experience. And I walked on set, and I was a position called the, I think it was the gaffer or the key grip. And you're in charge of setting up lights and lighting equipment and stuff like that. And so like, you should know pretty much by now, if you're 7 years into it, you should know what the names of every light is, every stand is, every, like, you know, all these equipment that's very specific to the job. It's so important. And that slowed, obviously, that he had to take time to like tell me like, oh, which light he actually wanted. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. And then I went to go set. And so like, you know, just that interaction just slows the whole production down and stuff like that. So like, I take more time to set the light up.
Yeah, like even if you get the job, if you can't do the job, it's like you're not gonna, for example, for you, like they probably won't hire you again because they're like, oh well, he lied. And or like, for example, if you're an intern and you lied about having experience and you really suck, then it's like you're not gonna get hired, right? Whereas I feel like if you were truthful and you don't, or you're a little bit more inexperienced, but someone is willing to give you a chance because they think you can learn quickly, I feel like that's a better, because then they expect you, okay, they're still learning, they give you some grace, they help you through it, they're more patient with you because they know that you're a beginner, they know like what level you're at. And I think that's, I mean, I feel like honestly, honesty is always the best policy in just all aspects of life. And I don't think resumes and jobs are any different, but yeah, I could understand why some people would want to stretch the truth just to get their foot in the door. But at the same time, I feel like that will hurt you more than it will help you in the long run, right? Like, you can get in, but if it's like they expect you to do this big job that you don't know anything about, it's going to bite you in the butt eventually.
Yeah, true. What are your best tips on the resume? And then what are your best tips for the interviewing process?
That's a good question. So for the resume, I think I touched on it where I prefer, as a person who's looking at a resume, to have details, make it really easily readable and glanceable. Like, for example, put some keywords in there. Like for my job, it's like put the keywords that you want me to see, right? If you are very experienced in one thing, make sure you highlight that. Make sure you put things that you want me to see, and don't put a lot of filler stuff. I would rather read a smaller resume than see a bunch of stuff that is so unrelated to the job. It's like, cool, you won an award in 6th grade. Like, okay, don't put this on there, right?
Yes, yeah.
Making it so that it's clean, making it so that there's not a bunch of filler stuff just to make your resume look bigger and seem like you have more experience than you don't. Being honest on your resume is good too. For me, I always suggest that you have more than one person look at your resume, right? Everybody has their own flavor of what they think a resume or what a good resume looks like. So getting different opinions of people, like people who you look up to and who are actually experienced in that sense, I think definitely helps. Proofreading. Don't have typos on your resume. That looks really, really bad.
Yeah. If you personally were to apply to, let's say, Facebook, what would you put on your own resume?
So depending on the role, right, they're going to put some keywords in there that say you need to be experienced in this language and have X amount of years in this. I would definitely put all of those things if I can, as much as I can, to match what their job description looks like. My resume should have as much information that's mirrored, you know, obviously in my own words. That's probably what I would do, is that I would try and pretty much not copy paste essentially, but take a lot of keywords from their job description and put it in mine. I think it's important to look at their core values too. Like if that's something you want to put on your resume, like not just the technical part, but like a soft skill. Like if they really value, I don't know, volunteering. Communication. Like make sure you highlight all those things too. Make sure it's like really tailored to their core values, the job description, all of that.
Yeah, same thing over here, you know, in the freelance world. Like you have to like put everything that's like related to the gig that you're trying to apply for. It just makes sense, you know, everywhere. It just makes sense. Like if you're working at camera department, don't put stuff that's like about sound, you know, like even if you have experience in sound, like it doesn't make any sense to, because they're so unrelated. And so like, you know, it doesn't make sense for you to put sound when you're applying for like a camera position.
Right.
So what are some of your best tips about nailing the interview process?
So the thing that my manager actually told me that I thought was very, very helpful is that the people who are interviewing you are not interviewing because they want to find flaws in you. They are interviewing because they want you to succeed. They want to find, like they have check boxes, right? They're like, okay, I need to know if they're good at this. So let me ask questions that are tailored to that. And if you're honest and you actually fill that box, they're gonna be like, oh, awesome. You know, like these are all the things I want to fulfill in this role. And I'm not trying to weed anybody out, right? Like I'm trying to fill this because I'm trying to find the best candidate. So they're trying to help you out rather than not, right? And I think that was a nice mind shift, because every time I go into a room, I'm like, oh, I hope I don't say the wrong thing. I hope, you know, I meet all the requirements, and just like feel like they're interrogating me in a way, and I don't meet their expectations. But it's completely, I think it's nice to like think about it the completely opposite way of like, they're here to see me succeed. They want me to succeed. They want to hire me, and they just want to ask questions about me to get to know me, you know? So kind of flip-flopping that in a sense, and not thinking of it as like, oh, they're here to just, you know, weed me out of the system and not give me a chance, right? Like they hired you or they interviewed you for a reason. They thought that you know, could bring something to the table. They just want to find out what that is, right? And I think too, that confidence is practicing. If you are just winging your interview, obviously you're gonna be nervous because you don't know what you're gonna say. There's lots of resources on Google. Have someone interview you, do like a practice run, and like have them ask all the tough questions. So that way, like just speaking it out loud and practicing what you're gonna say is super, super helpful. and just kind of getting used to talking about yourself, getting used to answering questions about certain things is super helpful. For me, when I was doing the interview process of like my entry level, I interviewed with I tried to interview with a lot of companies. As nerve-wracking as it is, it gave me so much insight of like what people are looking for, right? Like questions, they're a little bit different from company to company, but for the most part, they ask pretty much the same thing, just in a different flavor. And just kind of failing at some of them and being like, okay, shoot, I really need to work on that and like figure it out for my next interview. So if you can, interview as much as you can, that way you get that practice, you know? Like I know it's really nerve-wracking, but the more you do it, the better you get. So
yeah, I don't know how much it applies to like the corporate world, but like the way you get along with the person who interviews you is huge, because at least in the film industry, like the people connection is so much more important than, not so much more important, but I when I was interviewing, I felt like it was like a lot more important than your actual skill set. Not that your skill set is not important, but if you're inexperienced and you can get along with the person interviewing you, there's a higher chance that you might actually get hired for that job. Because I was getting interviewed by a director, and we were doing a feature film, and I was in a position called a second assistant camera, where you hold the slate, and I wasn't really experienced. I was technically interviewing for a different position called the grip, which is setting up the lights and stuff like that. And so I had never like really done any camera stuff, but because I got along with the director pretty well, and I was telling her, oh yeah, I love working with cameras because like I'm constantly like learning about cameras and stuff like that. It's really fun. And all, so I spoke to her, and like I got to really get to know her, and she really got to know me as well. And so like I eventually got hired to become the assistant camera, the second assistant camera, instead of setting up lights, different position. So I got paid more and stuff too, so it was
nice.
Cool. But yeah, I don't know how much does that apply a lot to the corporate world as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think it can apply to any job, right? Like I think people will go out on a limb for you more if they can get along with you better, right? Like if they can see potential in you and you're a really good person, you communicate really well, you seem like a really, really good fit, but you're just lacking a little bit of experience. Like I think people will take a chance on you rather than being like, no, they don't meet the skill set, because everything is learnable, right? You can learn over time. You can learn on the job. I think that's a big thing in tech and in, I guess, any field really. It's like you don't need to know every little answer or every answer to the question, but if you can give me a good enough answer and you're like, but I'm willing to learn about it, then I'd be like, okay, like I probably will give you a chance and see, what you can do and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely think communication and being, able to show yourself off in that way is important, and getting along with your interviewer is important too. So I think definitely in tech, it's also a contributor. If you were to hire someone, for example, and you want someone to help with whatever, what do you guys look for in a resume or in a person?
It's funny because like we're just about to interview videographers for your wedding. One of the things that we always look for, there's a couple of things, but one of the most important things is how many years of experience do you have? So like for weddings, it's very specific, right? Like weddings is going to be very different than shooting a music video, and also looking at through your portfolio. So that your portfolio is your kind of like resume in the filmmaking world. And so the portfolio is so important, because like you have to show off your best work, just like on a resume, talk about your best work and projects and stuff, relevant work and stuff like that. If I look at your portfolio and your years of experience that you say don't match up to your portfolio, like your portfolio is like not so good, but you've been working for 10 years, then, then I'm not going to hire you. Then, immediately you're just not going to be considered. So that's like one of the most like important things I look for is years of experience, and then your portfolio. Effectively communicate, I think, is another huge thing. Is on the day of, there's so many things going on, and you have to be super focused and pay attention to everything and know how to communicate nicely but assertively to the photographer, the couple, the wedding planner, people, the guests. Stuff like that is super important. I think there's a bunch more things, but like those are like the high level things that we look for. I think communication, and then having those skill sets tailored to that job that you're looking for, and making sure you're honest in your resume or honest in your interview is really important too. So I think that applies to just
every industry, really.
Yeah. And if you can get along with the person interviewing you, that's even better. If we know that they sound really friendly and they sound really awesome, like awesome people to be working with,
yes,
then there's a higher chance that we hire them.
Yeah, definitely. I think you get a little bit more grace too with like, oh, maybe you're a little bit more inexperienced, but if you're willing to learn, your attitude is awesome, then it's like, oh yeah, no problem. I'll teach you. I'll help you and all that kind of stuff.
That's it for this episode. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed what we talked about in this episode. If you want more content from us, make sure to follow us on our social media channels. We'll have links in our bio or description. Have a great day.